when I was assistant superintendent at Natalia, and she wanted to use my science and math teachers in our middle school, and I said, wow, sounds like a great deal. What, you're gonna train our math teachers, and you're gonna teach them how to be better math teachers, and teach them how to be better science teachers? That's not gonna cost me anything? Great! And you're gonna pay them to do it? Anyway, I couldn't see anything wrong with the program at all, and so I put my full support behind it, and when things changed, and I became a private consultant, I started working with her and doing the presentations, and well, let me back up. When I was assistant superintendent, I went with her on a couple of road trips and visited a couple of schools that were in the program already. And we noticed right off the bat that some schools had the program going really well and others didn't. And when we talked to the principal of the school that was going really well, the principal knew all about it. And the principal was right there with the teachers helping them. And when we talked to the school that teachers were struggling, principal didn't have a clue who we were or what we were about. So that kind of planted the seed that the principals need to be involved in order for this program to be successful. Hopefully today we'll get to the research that actually shows that. And some of you helped me get that research. So anyway, that's me. Denise? Sorry, mouthful.
That's okay. I do that to everybody else, so it's gonna be right.
Okay.
I'm Denise Kern, and I'm a retired principal from Comal ISD. I retired a year ago, June, and June 30th actually, and by July 5th, my husband said, you really need to find something to do with your time. So then by February, I decided to run for the school board in Comal, and was elected.
Congratulations.
Thank you, I think.
Condolences.
Yeah, and in the process of running the campaign, Sandra called me, interestingly, did not identify herself, just starts talking to me, and she says, well, I'm inclined to vote for you, but I need to know a little bit more about you. So we had this
Tricky.
wonderful conversation, and finally at the end of it, I said, could I ask what your name is? And she's like, oh, I'm Sandra West. I said, aren't you the one that donated the science materials to Mountain Valley my first year as principal? She said, yes, I am. I said, well, my science teacher just practically did backflips when she got all that stuff. Anyway, so then we had many other conversations, and as I was elected, then she said, as soon as you get elected, before that, she said, as soon as you get elected, then after that I want to talk to you about Mix It Up. So she asked if I wanted to mentor
Didn't find it.
principals, and I said, oh, I love
Didn't
that
find
stuff. So
No, I submitted.
that's how I ended up doing this. So I'm an observer and learning right along with the rest of you, but yeah, so I'm here to enjoy and learn, and
It was a great resource.
so that's
I'm Greg Mahalik, just recently retired, 29 years, teaching science of middle school and high school during that 29 years. I actually met Dr. West 20 some odd years ago when I was doing 2 years as an assistant principal. Met her, I believe at CAST, for administrators, but anyway, I've had contact with her over the last 20 years, had several of her student teachers at Canyon High School in New Braunfels, which is where I spent my last 16 years. So, and then she texted me, a couple weeks before the end of May, wanted to know if I was going to retire, and here I am. So,
He kept threatening.
This is my 3rd year with this program. This program is incredible, amazing. I don't know where I've ever gotten so much support and so much help whenever I've had a need. And not just with math and science, I mean school and situations in school. And while I have a successful school, it's always a challenge. It's not a secret, everyone knows, I'm 1/3, 33 33% of my teachers, core teachers, are coaches. So they're not available for tutoring in the morning or in the afternoon. They're not available for any staff meetings. They're not available to be on duty. They're not available for sponsorship for any of our student programs or activities. 30% of my teachers. And it's just been a huge challenge. And any time that I need to, and I have a need right now for an English teacher coach, and there are tons of coaches, and if you're a coach, I apologize, but there are tons of coaches. So if you advertise for a coach, you're gonna have a line out the door. So what we get is a bunch of coaches who say, well, I'll try to teach science, or I'll try to teach English, or whatever. There are very, very few science teachers who want to be coaches, or English teachers who want to be coaches, or math teachers who want to be coaches, very few. And in fact, I just had that experience because this year I also had to hire a science teacher, and I had a bunch of coaches out the door. They didn't even know the elements, the parts of an atom, for crying out loud, and want to teach science. The one good science person that I had who applied, and God, it was good. And I wanted to hire him. And the AD said, oh no, I don't like him because he can't coach it. I've got to have someone who knows basketball, and that's what we have to have. And in Divine, sports is king. And it trumps education every time. And I fought it and have been fighting it for 3 years. And making progress, to be honest with you, making progress. It's not necessarily the superintendent's fault. They would let her go. If the community had to vote, if we had a choice of, okay, we've got to cut funds, and either we need to let math go or we're going to let go of football, 90% are going to vote to let go of math.
It's all free.
Well, they'll get it somewhere else, but football, we've got to have that. And I'm not against sports. I mean, it's a wonderful, please don't hear me saying that. Sports is great, and it's huge because it's the very impetus, it's the thing that keeps some kids in school and willing to be there and passing and all those kind of things, and I love that. But for crying out loud, let's have my elected teachers be the ones who are coaches. But let's have the coaches who are coaching at high school be at high school, not at middle school. There are a bunch of things we can do, in my opinion, that could help us out. But they've always been there. I can call, and they've got thoughts and ideas and support, and plus it's helped my math and science program, and it's a challenge. Science, an example. One of my science teachers who's in the program is a bus driver. So he's not available before or after school either. He is available during school, but he can't be doing any duties, and he can't be doing any tutorials, he can't be doing any staff meetings. I mean, he's sort of like one of the coaches. And so I have four, you can count, 4 science teachers. 2 of them are coaches, and 1 of them is a bus driver. So that leaves me with 1 science teacher available before school and after school when it comes to the meetings. 1. And he's my department head. I'm just, so it's frustrating. I can't tell you how frustrating it is. And I don't care how hard you work, and we do incredible, amazing things. And the fact that we're doing as well as we are, I'm going to mix it up with a big part of that because of the support and help that we get. But they make a huge difference. And I begged and pleaded to continue in this program because there's so much that we get from it, and I really appreciate it. So that's my story.
Mine's pretty simple. My name's Ana Buenteo, and I'm principal at Navarro Elementary in Lockhart ISD, and this is my 30th year in education. Run the gamut of being principal at Catholic schools, and I think I've been in, I've been in Aldine, I've been in Austin, I've been in Corpus Christi, I've been in San Antonio. Yeah, so I've been, the only place I guess major city would be the Valley and Dallas, so.
You haven't done yet.
Yes, I haven't done yet, so.
I'm Deanna Wattis. I also work in Lockhart ISD at Clear Fork Elementary.
is our first year in the program, so just kind of getting used to everybody and everything we're doing, and I've enjoyed so far, so.
And I'm Rob Whitworth. I'm principal at Saints Peter and Paul Catholic School in New Braunfels, and so just finished my 4th year there. I need to do some math, but I think about 20 years in education, and have bounced around as well. So Dallas, I did make it to Dallas for 2 years, and then I started my administrative career in a little public school called in Ganado, Texas. So your experiences, I completely relate. I was the elementary principal, which was on one wing, and then the second wing was a 7 to 12 campus. The superintendent was at the end of the hall, and it was completely that.
Those are fun, aren't they?
And the high school principal, because of all the athletics and everything else, I was textbook coordinator, dyslexia coordinator, federal programs coordinator, all those things that related to education but didn't relate to athletics. So that I can completely relate to some of your struggles and frustrations. That was that. But and so no, this is our first time within the program, and I'm really excited. I'm excited that our teachers are on board, and that the teachers that we have on board, Mrs. Duncan and Mrs. Arnold. And Mrs. Arnold has had the great fortune of serving as a curriculum director at NBISD for about 6 years before she came here. So she's a wonderful resource for our school, and so I'm excited to be here and to learn more about science education and education in general. I was looking at the Professional Learning Communities book, and I have one of the young administrators at school that I'm trying to cultivate is really on fire about professional learning communities. So I'm excited that this will be another segue into her using that, and that'll be awesome.
If I can interject, you're welcome to bring for example, your AP
Okay.
and, other people in.
Okay.
I have a limit in terms of who I can pay and how much I can pay.
Right.
Which reminds me, don't forget you need to tell Monica when you're on contract or not on contract this summer, so we know how much we can pay you.
All right.
That's state money, so you can get paid all the time.
Yeah, okay. So, well, no, and really we appreciate the invitation, and our invitation came through a parent who works with Dr. West here at Texas State, so we're excited, and her husband teaches religion at school for us. So.
And is also a friend.
Yes.
My name is Abraham Dominguez. I'm the assistant principal at George Irwin Academy. This is my 4th year officially, but really 5 years. And my wife was in this program, and both of us, when we go to events, we always look through each other's stuff, okay? And I had seen her stuff, and then I saw Ben Johnson's name, and I called Ben. I said, Ben, how come you didn't include us? Well, he did include us, but the bureaucracy. But right there and then, when I just looked at what they were getting, it was evident that it was really great. It really is great. Unfortunately, I'm no longer over these grade levels, so the administrator that we have, for some reason, has not bought into it. And I'm sorry to say is that this year we don't have anyone participating. And but you look at this, let me tell you, Dr. West, we have this administrator, and all of a sudden it's new to her, like, oh, we have new math teaks. And every time I leave here, I leave with things that are usually Dr. West will talk about ahead of the time. The new teaks, they said, hey, start playing with it. We would implement it now, okay? And those are things that you go back and you really take, okay? So I was learning a lot, and like yesterday, that writing, I thought that was so great. So that in itself, if I can say, if I can just use that, it's worth it. It's worth it.
By the way, most of that lesson is now up on the Mix It Up YouTube website. I got the last 42 minutes of the lesson. It took 3 hours to upload, but it's on there. So if you want to go back and revisit any part of that, it's on there.
And
What's
while
she
you're
gonna
there,
do
why
for
don't you
PowerPoint?
introduce yourself?
The PowerPoints, maybe this would be a good time for you to talk about tracks.
A new math program, and we had to go back in as a principal group and discuss because $30,000 was gonna be spent on the manipulatives. And it took us fighting and fighting and going, this is what's important. Luckily, we were able to take out some other things to get those, but those were the first things they wanted to cut. And we're like,
Who wanted to cut? The teachers
well,
wanted to
central office was a big, they wanted us to come in and they said, well, why can't we make some of these things? I'm gonna pay somebody to make them, so I might as well pay to just get them shipped in,
And
so.
then, you know, once they're made, they're not laminated, they're not paper, they're good for years.
Mhm.
But I just have a story about that you could feel free to use. My daughter was in algebra last year, struggled with factoring binomials, man, and I said, well, is your teacher using algebra tiles or anything like that to help you? And she was like, no, we're not using that at all. So I have an app, Algebra Tiles is the app, and we sat down, and I was like, okay, well, this is what you're doing, and she's like, oh, you know, and it took us.
But an app is not the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
It is not concrete.
I didn't have my algebra tiles, but at least it was something visual
Visual.
for her to see, you know, and.
And
you know,
that's more
she's
concrete
actually
than
able to
numbers are.
manipulate the algebra tiles themselves and the factoring, crossbar is there and she understands it better, but she sat through a whole semester of, you know, algebra.
I think you have to
class.
remember Browning's story, how many hours it took for her, 120 hours, before she really figured it out and went from her very abstract thinking to why the concrete experience was needed.
But I think that that's prevalent, you know, in upper grades. You know, we don't need to use those. Those are for kids who, you know, they're little kids. It's beginning concepts. But, you know, you don't understand that algebra was a beginning concept for my daughter.
Did you see that? Oh. So I gave it to teachers that we weren't even part of Mix It Up.
Well, in my opinion, principals should go into the math classes they're observing and take that in there, and they will know what concepts they're supposed to be teaching from the TEKS, and they would be asking, you know, maybe you do, if you do a pre-interview, if it's really a, you know, not just a walkthrough, that you would ask them where these are the manipulatives you should be using to teach this.
Second group.
And there's this science camp here in Marble Falls. Well, it was valued at $15,000. Our children went for the first time because we could take 75 children. The only thing we required is for transportation. Well, they came back so excited that now it's become a tradition. A tradition. And you talk about parents doing fundraisers. It was, I want it, and my wife was at that time was at another school. She said, I want it for my campus. Okay, just went out there. So that Mix It Up has already left a legacy, because those kids is now they look forward to it. Like everybody's like, hey, when you get up to 4th and 5th grade, you go there. You have to understand, some of our children have never left San Antonio. Okay, but not only that is that it gives me heads up in a lot of things. Is because like last year, you were able to look at what was coming up with the curriculum, and so that's a lot of benefits.
Okay, Jen, you didn't introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Jen. I actually had to add the other 3 syllables to my name, or sorry, the other 2 syllables, so now I'm Jennifer, because I've been Jen for a long time, but she told me this year, you're Jennifer, because there's too many Jens running around. I started my master's program in 2009 after seeing Dr. West do a presentation at my CTRC collaborative that I was a part of, and she was talking about a specific program that I had been thinking a lot about. So I met with her, and in August of that year, I was enrolled here at Texas State to do an MSIS, and she was my advisor. Well, part of my MSIS degree was working with the MIX program, kind of doing what Rowan does and the other,
Grunt work.
yeah, you know, I mean, I was basically her graduate slave. No, I'm just kidding. But
And it was so fun.
it was amazing. And the times that I did get to sit in with the teachers and look at what they were doing, I was really, really just, you know, learning a lot myself, as in addition to all the classes that I was taking. So when I graduated in 2012, she invited me to be a participant in the program. So naturally I jumped at the chance. So I just graduated from Mix, And now I'm back as kind of,
She's so good, we hired her.
There you go. Jack
So-
of all trades.
yeah, and so my basic job is to help any way I can, but to also work with the fifth grade teachers and talk about lesson planning and the deep thinking that really needs to go into the lesson planning that we don't necessarily have time to do during the school year, to sit and plan for hours for one subject. But that's what we do here, and we make those cross-curricular connections. And, integration is not new, it's not something, I remember back in 1993 when we were integrating into language arts and social studies and all that kind of stuff, but it takes time to do it well. And
Well, it's actually, the way we see it, it's teaching a way of thinking. So if you're developing this pattern of thinking and thinking deeply about what that learning objective is and what the lesson has to include to get students to learn that is what's important. So it's a pattern of thinking that we're trying to teach them, how to think deeply about lesson planning and not just shoot from the hip, so to speak.
And I've had some bad habits completely corrected by Dr. West, and I think a lot of teachers do this. We search for the activity that's going to teach the TEK. We modify the activity a little bit, and we move into activity-based TEK lessons without actually thinking about what the TEK is saying, and then from there, working up activities or finding something. So I don't know.
Could I give a summary of that? You start with a learning objective, and then you find the materials, et cetera, that support that. You don't start with a favorite activity and then see if you can figure out what TEKs that might teach.
And I think it's kind of a shortcut that a lot of
Might as well back up and, Robert, I'll show you the test. They were supposed to find the height of that building right there, and they could use any of those tools. They were to decide on a plan, implement a plan, and evaluate the results. They have the results here on the wall over there. Most of them, one group was going to use the shadow and be able to figure out the height of the building, but they couldn't get to where the shadow was because it was all blocked off. So most of them ended up, one version or another, finding the size of the bricks and calculating, from that how tall the buildings were. These were the different calculations here. 52 feet, 51 feet, 60 feet, 57 feet. And I would say that's pretty close, doing that kind of estimation. This is my own estimation, but I went for the tall building there, the tall part right there. And the way I estimated it was I used similar triangles. And I just stuck my thumb out. I know that this is 5.5 inches. And so I stuck my thumb out, and I knew, the length of my my arm there, 25 inches. And then I paced off a distance, and I was able to do similar triangles. Now, those of you, we've all been teachers. What happens when you give your students a model and say, this is what I did, now I want you to go out and do anything you want to do. What happens? You're going to do what you did. Okay, so if I had showed you my concept, all of you would have done the same thing.
But that's where Jen was going. Remember, Jen was kind of going in the direction of cosine of theta, but you didn't let her know that.
Yeah. This is what Jen was talking about. First of all, she thought about, it's a triangle, right triangle, maybe a Pythagorean theorem would work, and she didn't go long enough, and then she started thinking about, maybe we could use trigonometry. And I just looked that up, I couldn't remember it, so I looked it up. But cosine of theta, so if you have this angle and this distance, you can find that. So, in terms of actually being a student and being a teacher, let's evaluate that activity. How did it go? Well, what did you learn from it? Talk to your elbow partner.
that the sun is not always bright.
We have to activate the turn on. We can activate our own turn on. We came up with our own. And we had to come up with like, what is it?
I'm ready to say that, the fact that we
Wow,
I spewed all that out.
I think
Pretty
I,
impressive.
okay. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Well, it was relevant, like you gave us a real world problem, like something that we might have to do. Oh, there it is, sorry, I didn't see that.
Part of my scribbles.
It was also after lunch,
Mhm.
and it's really
Okay.
important to have activity after lunch while people are trying to digest and do those other things, because otherwise you could go.
Okay.
Well, and I was to say, having been a math teacher, for your disengaged, especially disengaged boys, they view this kind of activity as a contest or competition in some ways, and they become more involved in something like this because they look at the other groups and want to see who's gonna win or whatever. So,
I'm laughing because yesterday as we were walking up the stairs, Mark, who was he with? I don't know who he was with, but he was up front, and then he's like, well, what are y'all gonna do? And how are y'all gonna do? I mean,
But he's naturally like
but
that.
he's very competitive, so as you say that, I mean,
Well-
we couldn't get up the stairs before he was asking us what we were gonna do and how this was gonna be, and I'm like, you do your own thing, you know, so.
I just,
yeah,
I feel like, you
definitely.
know, it was when you think about what NCTM says is a good lesson, it had all the components of all the strands that NCTM says need to be in a good math problem. So,
Was it complicated?
Yes,
no.
I thought it was.
Not really,
No.
it was fun.
Okay, well, I mean, from the teacher standpoint, it is pretty straightforward, just figure it out, you're on your own. Okay, so, okay, awesome. Good things. I did notice that, the first thing y'all asked me was,
Do you know the answer?
you know the answer? Why?
It's because we want to be right.
We wanna be right.
That's what I'm
Okay.
telling you, people,
And check
it's
your
like a
answers.
contest, it's a competition.
All right,
Well,
so.
confirmation, validation.
Ah, put that down here. Competition. Okay, so competition is good?
And you didn't set it up as a competition, but people inherently want to be right.
Well, because it helps you evaluate yourself,
Yes.
That's also true.
yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't want to be messing around with a process that isn't gonna help me.
Okay, so in the classroom, whether you set it up as a competition or not, the competition is there.
Yes.
Sandra?
Not everyone likes competitions. If you look at the gender research, I don't know if you keep up with Leonard Sachs' work. Boys and girls have very different personalities, and then there's subsets within those. So,
Okay.
to me, that says I can't have the same assignment for everybody. I mean, I might have the same assignment today for one set, but tomorrow's not gonna be exactly the same, let's say competition, if you will. It's not gonna be another competition one.
I think,
Could be problem solving,
I think about
but not
my
necessarily
sisters.
competition.
My sisters are not competitive, so they wouldn't even consider it a competition. They would go out with their group and be very compliant and do the work, and they would still get something out of it, but then your disengaged boys that like competition, this is what's gonna, when you decide it's the next day and when you teach our cosine of theta lesson, they're gonna actually be paying attention because they thought about how they figured it out without knowing any math, and that math becomes more relevant to them, so. I think it's not, you don't have to even say it's a competition, I just think you're naturally competitive people. They rise up, and I say this from having, for whatever reason, as a middle school teacher, each year as a middle school teacher, I had at least one class that had 22 boys or more. Just as a fluke, and there would be like 3 or 4 girls in the class, and what I noticed is anything that seemed like a contest, I had a lot of engagement.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, what about negatives? Should have done this. None? Wow,
Yeah.
cool.
Didn't have the answer.
No answer.
We still don't know if we're right.
Yeah.
We found the plans for that building, but we couldn't find an isometric drawing of it, so.
That's funny.
It's a minute building, let's Google it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay,
I
all
thought
right.
I thought it was just a superb example of what we want teachers to do. And then for us to be able to experience what we want teachers to be designing for kids to do, I just thought was, I really liked it.
What I enjoyed about it, we attacked this two different directions. And you saw men think different than women. Men think big. Look at big. I was worried first of, all right, how are we gonna measure the rafter? There's a rafter here. Where's it? Now she was into the detail like, okay, I'm not even worried about that. And I went to that, she went to say, okay, what are we gonna use to measure here? And I let her do her thing, I did my thing, and then we just came together. But then also, there was checking for understanding and checking whether right, because then she says, you're not about 6 feet, you're not 6 feet tall, are you? I said, no. She said, well, that way we can make sure that we're accurate, and then she even took the picture. So you saw two people look at it totally different, but he came together, because then what I saw was, all right, you did your part, and I like that, but now I'm gonna show you a little piece that we missed. And I think there was no intimidation. And I think also you understood, hey, look, you in the process, now you understood, hey, now I understand why all these prior skills are so important.
Okay, one of the things that I was hoping that you would say up here in terms of a negative is ambiguity.
Why is that?
Well, I was hoping you would say that. I don't necessarily view ambiguity as a negative. But have you ever had a lesson that, you had it clear in your mind, but when you presented it to the students,
Oh my gosh.
they just didn't get it at all? And part of the reason was that things that you took for granted, you understood, they viewed as very ambiguous and didn't know where you were coming from. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that y'all went out there and the ambiguity didn't faze you at all. You just went out there and did whatever you wanted to. But there are some students and some teachers that need to be given a list. Do this first, do this first, do this first, and do this first. And one of the things that I wrote in my book, Teaching Students to Dig Deeper, is that one of the college readiness traits is that you have to be comfortable with ambiguity. Not knowing for sure which direction or how to do things or where to start, you gotta be comfortable with that. And so I think this kind of activity sometimes is really, really good for students. And you're gonna see some uncomfortable students because they want direction. They want you to tell them how to do this. But even worse, you try something like this with your teachers, you're gonna see the same thing.
I was just thinking of that.
Exactly the same thing.
Because
And
the
this-
pleasers have a hard time, they wanna please, and teachers, I think the majority of teachers were pleasers when they were students.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and teachers are teachers for a reason. Yeah, we're kind of cast out of the same mold. I mean, there's variations, but certain types of people consider being teachers.
Okay, one of the things that I is going through my head, remember yesterday when she talked about how writing builds confidence? And how she built that paragraph and then all of a sudden, didn't they read it out loud and it sounds awesome?
Oh, well, he did a masterful job.
And,
Wow.
and so that's
That
a
wasn't
confidence,
prepared, right? That
that's a
wasn't
confidence builder. How is confidence related to being able to tolerate ambiguity? Is there a correlation between a high level of confidence and being able to tolerate ambiguity and a high level of ambiguity, or like
It would make sense.
I'm just wondering that, that's one of the.
Well,
Well, I think perfectionists don't have trouble with ambiguity. When you're a perfectionist, you know, like not, some people would be really bothered and want to know the right answer. Like they would be telling him, you need to find out the right answer, or they would be paralyzed by fear to even attempt but that's where the group work works, because what was interesting, and that's that case study that we read, I was making the connection, it seemed like that Jennifer took the lead in her group and everybody followed, and then they came to more meaningful, so it sort of supports Vygotsky when you have a heterogeneous group with everybody brings their own set of more knowledgeable other things that they put together to come up with something, you know, so I go back to a friend of mine got a job with a public accounting firm and they sent him to a business to do a trial balance. And he had a master's from the University of Chicago, but he had never done a trial balance. He said he sat there and looked at the paper for like 2 hours before he finally called the senior and said, I don't know what to do, because it was kind of ambiguous what they told him to do. They said, go over there and create a trial balance. That they'd given him some more detail or whatever, and so I think in my life outside of school, how many ambiguous things you really do have to deal with. A plumber, they don't know what the problem is when they come to your house. They have to start like, they're dealing with a bunch of ambiguous facts that they try to put together, and I think all jobs are like that. And
All
as a,
problem solving is.
yes, well, as a math teacher though, we tend to make kids think there's an answer, there's a right answer.
Yes,
But
and
most of the
hopefully you
time in
saw
math
that, I
it's
think,
true, there is.
Dr. Browning mentioned that. Math is all nice and neat and beautiful,
Yeah.
and science is all messy and gooey, so. Okay, y'all know your Roman numerals, right?
I hope so.
I don't think they teach those anymore.
Okay,
I'm not
what number is
confident
that?
anymore.
9.
9.
Okay, so there's a certain method for understanding that. If you didn't know your Roman numerals, that wouldn't mean much to you. Okay, so on your piece of paper, on your scratch paper, doesn't matter, backside of the paper, write that Roman numeral down.
Idle 9.
That's the only reason we really know that.
Exactly.
And here's a problem for you. Add one line to make it a 6.
can we take away anything?
Nope. Can't change it, just add one line and make it a 6. That's pretty easy, I think. If you know the answer, cover it up, though.
Oh,
You set that parameter, but
Yeah.
he did not qualify, he didn't say, it has to be a straight line, and I thought, then I could do an S. It's just like,
well, that's why I asked you, can I take anything away, because I'm thinking mathematically, because you said Roman numerals.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm making it like this, and if it's wrong, we'll figure it out.
There you go, and I think,
I'm doing it.
you know, teachers need to be aware that sometimes they do that intentionally and unintentionally. They
Right.
get the student thinking in the wrong direction, especially when they bring up counterexamples first. But anyway, we've
Excuse
been
me.
at this, yes.
Could I interject there? One of the principles I teach my students is you teach the rule, not the exceptions, until they understand the rule. For example, you don't teach about the duck-billed platypus first. You teach about cats and dogs and goats or, you know, whatever. So you teach the rule first, because if you throw in the exception to the rule or the anomaly, they don't understand the pattern.
Okay, we've been at this for an